For more on this, let's speak to Ashish Prashar in New York. He's a former advisor to the Middle East peace envoy and a former political strategist for the Biden campaign. Really good to have you with us, sir. This is an extraordinary development because we know it is compulsory for all Israelis to serve in the military, but this NGO based in Brussels is embarking on this campaign to launch legal action against these serving members who may have committed war crimes in Gaza. What's your view on this? Is this something that Israeli officials should have anticipated?
Yes, I mean, look, we can all see it, right? What Israel is doing in Gaza, it's not war as we understand it. It's industrial slaughter. It is genocide. The ICC, the ICJ, provisional ruling, UN experts, genocide scholars have all spoken. Israeli and American feelings about this aren't facts. It's been live streamed for all the world to see, not just by journalists in Palestine that have worked for Al Jazeera, TRT, and everyone else. It's been live streamed by the Israeli soldiers themselves. There's the evidence of their war crimes are on their Instagrams, their TikToks, for all of us to see in a celebratory way as well. It's time for international human rights lawyers beyond this organization to step up and skip the ICC, quit waiting on that final ICJ ruling and take action. Take this model from Brazil and apply it to everyone involved in this genocide. You know, this is a model to show that international law still exists, frankly. And you don't just have to use international law. Most countries have their own anti-terror laws. They have their own domestic laws about crimes against humanity. And this action in Brazil only reinforces that international law and international humanitarian law, which is hanging on by a thread, still exists and can be applied to everyone. And may this be the norm for many years to come, and the norm for all occupation soldiers, politicians, and governments that partook, aided, and abetted in this genocide. And this isn't the only case, by the way. You know, judicial systems in Morocco and South Africa are already looking into dual citizens that have taken part in this genocide. And this, frankly, is a message that there'll be no safe place on earth for these war criminals.
And the organisation HRF that's launching or pushing for these legal actions say that they've attempted to get authorities in various countries to arrest active Israeli soldiers. To date, though, we don't know of any confirmed arrests of Israeli soldiers. But to your point, it does highlight this issue that perhaps while on a government-to-government level there doesn't seem to be any or little action in bringing Israel to justice, groups like HRF are looking to take it upon themselves to target specific individuals. And we know this is happening alongside a case that's being brought before the UNs Highest Court, where South Africa and a number of other countries are accusing Israel of crimes against humanity and war crimes. Can we talk about that specifically? Do you believe we'll see anything as a result of that legal action before the UN's highest court?
Well, I think the UN's highest court will just enshrine what we already all know, that it's a genocide, right? The interesting thing, and you mentioned yourself that people have taken these cases or these potential cases to countries, multiple countries, not just Brazil. We have to also look at some of the people who've prevented a real ceasefire, prevented an arms embargo, prevented the slaughter of Palestinians, and that one of the biggest perpetrators of that is the United States. They are also the biggest harborer of war criminals outside the occupied land of Palestine, of these Israeli war criminals. Of course, the UK is not far behind there and its own citizens. And, you've got to ask, if you're a citizen of the US right now, and hundreds, if not thousands, of these people have come home, right, after committing these war crimes. People in the US should not be comfortable knowing that the Israeli working next to them could have tortured Palestinians. The school teacher who takes care of their children could have murdered Palestinian children in cold blood. Some of them have actually taken images of doing that. And the person in the bar next to you, maybe hitting on you, has probably raped a Palestinian. Citizens of the United States, the UK, should be calling on their justices, their legal systems, to arrest them, charge them, and lock them up, while these international courts are trying to put the final nail in the coffin that this is actually a genocide. But lock these individuals up for war crimes right now, because none of us are safe until all of these Israeli occupation soldiers who live amongst us or travel to our countries roam streets freely, right? This is the start of how international law and domestic laws can be used. And I expect cases to expand rapidly, not just against soldiers. But your point about the ICJ, when that ruling comes in, I expect cases to expand rapidly against maybe the former Biden administration people like Secretary Blinken, Jake Sullivan, individuals who are the architects of this genocide, frankly, will also have cases against them. It won't just be occupation soldiers. And the way the public can support this is making demands of not just their politicians, who might not be helping them in this case, make their demands of international human rights lawyers who simply have a job to do here right now, make their demands of their justices, their district attorneys, their court systems to take action right now. Because if you're waiting for your government to do it in the West, they're going to fail you. They've already failed you. They have already aided and abetted this genocide. And Brazil has shown us the way to do this. Brazil has shown the public that they can take these cases to their domestic courts and hold these troops from Israel, but also politicians accountable for these war crimes they've committed.
Ashish, you mentioned that the US's role in all of this, its unfettered support for Israel throughout its war in Gaza. You were a political strategist to the Biden campaign. How do you assess his reaction to what we're seeing in Gaza as he prepares to leave office?
Well, personally, I was profoundly disappointed. But then when you look back at his history about his support of Israel and how I think he once said in the 90s or 80s that if Israel hadn't existed, he would have helped make an Israel. You know, it's the best investment that America has. We all should have known that he never saw Palestinians as human beings and, was going to do everything possible to support Israel's ethnic cleansing and genocide of Palestinians. I think what's really disappointing personally, as someone who also worked in the UK for likes of Tony Blair, is, when the illegal invasion of Iraq happened, the foreign secretary then, Robin Cook, resigned, and a significant amount of his foreign office resigned in objection to our illegal invasion of a sovereign country that hadn't committed any crimes. And watching no one from the state, very little, if anyone, quit from our US administration, standing up to the politicians that are overseeing and architecting these war crimes and this genocide has been profoundly disappointing. And we shouldn't just be looking at our politicians and Joe Biden and Antony Blinken. We should be looking at every individual who works in the State Department, in the White House, and ask why. What were you doing in this moment, this historic moment where a genocide, a Holocaust is taking place? And why were you aiding and abetting it? The problem here in the United States is it's not just Biden. It's not just the politicians that have openly talked about eradicating Palestinians like Lindsey Graham. It is every one of our government officials. It is every civil servant. They've not stood up to the institutions, bar 6 or 7 who resigned. And that is profoundly disappointing. And Americans need to look at not just our politicians, but our institutions and what they stand for.
Okay, Ashish Prashad, we will have to leave it there, but it was really good to get your thoughts. Thank you for joining us.